right, good morning and welcome to Breaking Points. How you doing?
Good. This Christmas set actually always gives me a flashback. I always feel like I have a flashback to you arguing with Ted Cruz on the Christmas set.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and
That
CNN
was on the
was
Christmas
running the
set.
video. Yeah, it was on the Christmas set. So I'm always like expecting Ted Cruz to.
We should have worn our Breaking Points Christmas sweaters,
I actually thought about that.
which you can get in our store down there.
There's still
I think, yeah.
there's still some available.
So go check out the merch store.
They're pretty great. Everybody
Yeah.
loves them. We should have worn them.
Get something in front of the tree for everyone.
Yes, or a BreakingPoints.com subscription.
Yes,
If
indeed.
maybe you can get a year of Friday show second halves for Christmas for someone you love, because those Friday show second halves, they get wild.
Although based on the new jobs report, which we'll be talking about at the top of the show, you probably can't. Things are getting dark.
Thanks,
Also
man.
speaking of the amount of money you're spending on healthcare, you probably can't. We'll be talking about that for our second episode. Although there's some good news in the fact that Republicans are completely collapsing, and that might lead them to actually pass the Democratic legislation. We'll see. If you're in Venezuela, you absolutely can't, because we're putting Venezuela under a complete and total naval siege. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, Trump put out a
blood.
wild Truth Social just last night, so we'll break that down too.
Susie Wiles, we'll talk about the Republican response to her incredible just vomiting of her thoughts to the Vanity Fair.
Day 2 of Susie Gate, it is
Loving
here.
it. We're loving every second of it. The New York Times had a fascinating, for many different reasons, story on Jeffrey Epstein yesterday.
yes.
We will talk about what was in it and, most importantly, what was not in it. Bari Weiss, meanwhile, is, she ran her Saturday night town hall with Erika Kirk. Huge get. Very difficult to get Erika Kirk an exclusive because she's usually on other networks. So it's hard to actually schedule that.
Between Fox and podcasts.
Yeah, the numbers are out, and it was terrible.
Could have been better. It could have been better.
Yeah,
That's
it was
for
very
sure.
bad. We'll have some updates on the Brown University shooting, as well as a nuclear scientist. Or even beyond a nuclear scientist. He was doing stuff that I can't even begin to try to explain. Was assassinated at his home. So we either have one or two killers still in the loose in the Northeast. I'm not sure which of those two scenarios is actually more frightening. The public now, rather than the FBI, has been falsely accusing people of being involved with the Brown shooting. We'll talk about all of that. And the weather is improving in Gaza, but we're going to talk about what the floods did and and a new drop site report on what the Israeli destruction of all the sewage treatment and trash collection has done to just day-to-day life in Gaza.
Well, let's get to a big show today. So we'll start now with these new job numbers. Well, we got new jobs data yesterday, and actually before we even dive too deep into that, the basic news is that about 64,000 jobs were added in November. That was higher than what many people expected, but the unemployment rate also rose in November. That's the gist of it. We're going to break down those numbers in more detail, but first, let's dive on into Fox News for a sample of how they covered where the economy is right now.
People are sick of waiting in terms of the jobs since Liberation Day, which is when most people look at as when things kind of start taking a turn for the worse. We've only added 17,000 jobs on a monthly basis. There are over 700,000 Americans who are unemployed today versus this time last year. That's a huge number. Unemployment for young Americans is over 10%. If you took out healthcare sector hiring, would be negative.
So if you're familiar with Fox, of course, that was Jessica Tarlov, who is a Democrat, not surprising, but spot the lie in those numbers. We can put the CBS tear sheet up on the screen here. Employers across the U.S. added 64,000 jobs in November, beating economists' forecast. New government data shows, even as new October figures revealed a loss of 105,000 jobs, a sign the labor market remains under pressure. The unemployment rate in November rose to 4.6%. That is the highest level since September 2021. They also go on to note that it's a picture of the labor market after the 6-week blackout and official data caused by the recent government shutdown. That's true, Brian. This is the first information we are getting here. The data suggests, CBS continues, that employers in industries ranging from manufacturing to hospitality are hitting the pause button on hiring amid concerns about economic growth and tariff costs, according to some economists. Quick reaction to that first, Ryan.
Yeah, what seems to be going on here, and this probably comports with your own experience, People aren't leaving their jobs voluntarily. They're holding on to jobs even if they hate them. They're not moving around and getting wage increases like they were during the pandemic and towards the end of the pandemic. But companies are not creating any new positions. And when somebody leaves, they don't fill that person. And so that's why you see that that unemployment number going up and to the right, which is not how you want it to go.
Okay, so let's then dive here into Kevin Hassett talking about the economy. This was from Face the Nation. Margaret Brennan in this clip is pushing Hassett on surveys of CEOs about employment. So could the situation get worse? Let's go ahead and roll the clip.
I want to ask you about the Fed decision. The Federal Open Market Committee said job gains have slowed this year. We also saw the survey from the Business Roundtable. I'm sure you saw it. They asked CEOs what they expect to happen, and they anticipate employment will decrease in 2026 rather than increase. Are you concerned about a hiring slowdown?
The same Fed said that they were more bullish on growth for next year, right? And so I think that we're at a
But on the jobs picture.
But on the jobs picture, we're going to get the data next week. And so maybe next Sunday I'll come back and we'll talk about it, because we've got 2 months of data coming out on Tuesday. And we'll get a clearer picture, because right now we just have some very difficult to pin down surveys. Like the gold standard for this will be really the household survey, which we don't even get for October.
But these were CEOs. They're the people who would be doing the hiring, right? And they're saying we're not doing it.
But they don't have the broad perspective that we'll get when we get the big data released next week.
And you trust that big data?
I trust the household survey especially. And sadly, we won't have one for October, but we're going to get one for November. And that's going to be really important for thinking about where the job market is.
Okay, and we can actually put the next element up on the screen as well. This is showing unemployment increasing over time since November 2023. So this is from Mike Konskal. He is the Senior Director of Policy and Research at the Economic Security Project, and he's saying it's not just that this job report is bad, though it is. Unemployment is up 0.47% in 2025 and increasing. It's that it shows what Trump hoped to do with the economy is failing. And Ryan, I just want to pause on that point, because it is, now that we have almost a year into the second Trump administration, fascinating, not surprising, but fascinating how closely they have tied themselves to AI, because Trump obviously, there are a million reasons that they've done that, but Trump obviously also saw AI as giving a shot in the arm to markets. And so, the amount of stock increase that's tied to AI right now is stunning and horrifying.
It's like more than all of it.
Yep. Yeah. And it's something like 80%. Like, it's crazy. And they now are going to have on their hands responsibility. Like, people will point to them. They would have done it anyway, but they basically have bear hugged these big tech companies that are going pedal to the metal on LLMs, artificial intelligence, and what's likely to happen in the next couple of years is mass displacement on the level of different periods during industrialization, where we've seen mass job displacement because of automation. I'm not even making a judgment on whether that's good or bad, although we talk about that a lot, but I'm just saying it's happening. And it's happening as they bear hug these AI companies to juice the markets. And that, just politically, as it's unfolding before us, kind of look back at last year and you're like, you guys didn't see this coming?
Yeah, and the comment from Kevin Hassett there was ominous, I'm sure, for people, where he was saying, okay, yes, the CEOs are saying that unemployment might be up next year, but what about growth? They're bullish on growth.
Yes.
And if you live on Wall Street, work on Wall Street, and live in upstate New York, then that's great. Unemployment's up, but growth is up too. Hey, that's even better, actually, because then you don't have to worry about uppity workers demanding higher pay. But you're like, wait a minute. What are you saying here? So you're putting all your money in AI and data centers, and you're saying that we're going to continue to have unemployment numbers going up, but the economy is going to continue to grow. How does that help the people that don't have jobs? And nobody's talking about that. If you had a party who was like, here is what we're going to do. Everyone's going to work 25 hours a week. And we're going to make sure that you're paid an amount that keeps up, not just keeps up, but gets you ahead. Because if we're getting all these productivity gains, let's enjoy it. Took us thousands of years as humanity to get to this place. let's bask in it. Instead, they're like, nah, jobs are going to keep collapsing, but growth is going to be good.
Well, on that note, let's go ahead and listen here to Treasury Secretary Scott.
Speaking of ominous, oh my God.
Well, this
guy.
actually makes the point,
Yeah.
your point about Kevin Hassett here, Bessent is fleshing out, I think, even more. We can roll this clip.
2008, 2009, 2010, financial rules were too tight. They have hamstrung the American financial system. It was time for a change. We are going to be safe, smart, and sound in terms of our deregulation, but we have to take the financial system out of the straitjacket.
Yeah.
This substantial increase in private credit, which is outside of the regulated banking system, that tells me that the regulated system is too constrained and has not been able to compete with those who aren't regulated. So we're leveling the playing field, and I believe that we can do that in a way that creates trillions of dollars in credit for this very strong economy we're going to see, and it will be non-inflationary.
All right, so Ryan, put your finance bureau hat back on. It's probably been since the early aughts, since you've had it on, but when he says the substantial increase in private credit, which is outside of the regulated banking system, that tells me that the regulated system is too constrained. What say you?
So, I mean, what he's saying there is this rise of private equity, basically, says that we're being too hard on oligarchs, and that we should just reduce the rules so that more people will then not follow the rules that we've gotten rid of.
Play around.
Yeah, I mean, it makes no sense. Like, it contradicts itself. It also leads exactly to financial crisis every single time. So it's also a kind of Hail Mary. Like, okay, nothing else is working. We need just a severe amount of deregulation so that we'll flood in, so capital can flow. We can get another subprime bubble. We need more bubbles, is basically what he's saying. Like, we're out of bubbles, and when this next one pops, we're going to need another bubble to keep things going. And then he adds at the very end, with no evidence, and it won't be inflationary. Oh, okay, good.
That's the point of the regulations.
Good, glad you cleared that up. The Mike Consul post where he talks about the rate of unemployment increasing. He also has a full thread, and maybe we can put it in the link so people can dig into it more. But what he does is he compares what the president is trying to do and what the president's team is trying to do to the economy with what is actually happening. And what he's trying to do is drive up wages for native-born workers, drive up wages on the low end in manufacturing. He's trying to reduce the amount of spending in healthcare, and he's trying to reduce the amount of spending for the federal workforce. And a key reason that you had an unemployment increase this month is because the DOJ firings actually finally hit now. Yeah. It's because of the federal rules and on and on. But what he finds is that nothing that they're trying to do is happening. In fact, the reverse is happening. Manufacturing jobs are collapsing. He writes here, unemployment is up everywhere, but especially for younger workers, black workers, and those with BAs and without a high school diploma.
So the Trump base. And
a bit more for men. Yes, the people that he said he was doing all of this for are the ones who are actually getting hit hardest by this. He chalks it up to all of the uncertainty that Trump has injected into the economy by making it really impossible to create a business if you have any reliance on imports whatsoever, deporting huge numbers of workers, and otherwise just being a chaotic dude. And it's like, yeah, this is what you're going to get.
Well, yeah, the uncertainty question.
And the increase in healthcare costs, of course.
So there's no way around, and I mean, I think you even hear it in what Hassett is saying. Hassett obviously is under consideration for a Fed spot, and there's leaking against Hassett right now, actually, interestingly enough. But what you're hearing them say is basically they're conceding they're in the middle of an experiment. They're very confident as to how the experiment is going to turn out when it comes to totally restructuring the economy. So we're talking deportations, manufacturing credits from the big tax bill, and trying to incentivize factory building and all of that in the United States.
Then why would we have a manufacturing collapse? Like, that's what I don't understand.
Well, I mean, I
if,
think
if you're about to have a boom, you would at least be staying steady.
Because, and this is the
But
point
instead,
that
companies are like, no.
well, yeah, and it's a point that you and Crystal have made since the very beginning post-Liberation Day, which is the uncertainty is going to send people to China. It is going to send people, not everyone, and that's what the administration is in the middle of trying to figure out is where does it shake out at the end of the day? Do you come out on top or do you come out on bottom? And it looks right now like their skeptics are proving correct. Now, there are all kinds of things that they can do in the new year because they're doing all of the tariffs, as we know, while awaiting a Supreme Court decision, ad hoc through the executive branch. And that means they have a whole lot of control over what happens in the new year. If they want to create more certainty in the economy, if they want to do all of these like grocery type carve outs for things like, I don't know, bananas, they can find a way to do it. They can, cross their fingers and hope that when their tax bill kicks in, more and more jobs start getting created. There are, of course, anecdotal examples of factories betting on the United States or companies betting on the United States and building factories here. And so the White House trumpets those examples constantly. But even they have to concede they're in the middle of something. And that's where just thinking about the AI question, as you're trying to restructure the economy, to bring jobs back to the United States, you're bear hugging an industry that is intentionally eliminating jobs in the United States. I'm reading here from a CNBC story from late last month, but we've been talking about the college unemployment rate. So recent college graduates that are unemployed. This is one of the big blind spots in politics right now, is that you have so many young people, rising youth unemployment, as CNBC puts it. And that's because entry-level jobs are being, this is CNBC, quote, some large employers have said they're replacing entry-level workers with artificial intelligence in order to streamline operations and cut costs. Concerns about the economy, persistent inflation, and a slowdown in consumer spending are also likely contributors to an erosion of entry-level opportunities, other research shows. And so on top of all of that, you have the administration saying, okay, well, college education pipeline, you need to incentivize vocational schools, technical education, great. We all agree with that. These are people who just got college degrees. There are people who are going to graduate next year and the year after that with college degrees who are not going to suddenly say, I'm picking up welding. And the jobs are being eliminated and the ladder is shifting. And so even just, that's the substantive point, but like the political point of this that's going to play out during the Trump administration is absolutely mass employment displacement. Like it's happening right now. It's going to continue to happen.
At least Bernie Sanders is responding to it. Interesting development from him last night. He put out a video calling for a moratorium on data center construction, which hits on both sides. Because the data center construction drives up your electricity bill and threatens your water supply while delivering basically no jobs. And if it works as expected, we'll also take your job. So it's like, wait a minute. So Bernie's like, I don't know, how about we not do that? Let's roll a little bit of Bernie.
What will AI and robotics mean economically for the working class of this country? Well, don't listen to me. Listen to the people who are developing those technologies. Elon Musk recently said, quote, AI and robots will replace all jobs. Working will be optional, end quote. Bill Gates predicted that humans, quote, won't be needed for most things, end quote. Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, warned that AI could lead to the loss of half of all entry-level white-collar jobs. Question: if AI and robotics eliminate millions of jobs and create massive unemployment, how will people survive if they have no income?
No, they have no answer for that, and nobody trusts them to answer that question. You know who they do trust is that guy. He looks spry. Maybe he could do one more run. What do you think?
He looks like he totally knows what AI is, how it works.
He gets it better than most.
He probably does. No, I actually believe that.
I mean, he gets the gist, which is really all you need.
Yeah, and I mean, some of this is like intentionally. We actually have such a murky picture of what's happening right now with AI and in the economy and what the company's plans are. But I don't necessarily support that policy, by the way, because what's happening in China and other countries is no matter what we do, that's going to continue to happen. So I think we have to be smart about it. But that is going to be, it's like the healthcare conversation that we're having in the next block. Absent a genuine, decent solution from the capitalists who just keep saying, trust us, we have your best interests at heart, you're going to end up with either Medicare for all, or in this case, you're going to end up with something like a moratorium, because people don't want the stupid option of just saying, go pedal to the metal, eliminate all of the jobs, and we'll just trust you to give us UBI and be happy when it all shakes out. And he's right. I mean, going back to those quotes from CEOs of tech companies, that is what they're saying. They're saying that aloud. That's what they think the future is going to look like. It's a question of how distant that future is. But I think you'd be ridiculous to think that's like multiple generations down the line when this is happening as quickly as it is happening. And so for the Trump administration to tie itself so closely, A, to the economy, I mean, and then B, to AI, just the politics of that are going to be difficult no matter what.
And so meanwhile, swinging into this struggling economy is the sledgehammer of these looming healthcare premium increases. We'll talk to Brian Blades, who's a conservative healthcare economist, about the latest going on in Congress about efforts to extend subsidies and why he thinks it's a terrible idea. In a moment, we're going to be joined by Brian Blades, who's a conservative healthcare economist, to talk through Republican healthcare policy and strategy, which is currently this week, it seems to be collapsing a little bit.
Yeah, and Brian is the guy to talk to. So
there you go.
On the right.
So here's Donald Trump talking about where he is right now.
What do you want to see Congress do this week as it relates to health care and the expiring ACA?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd like to see the people get the money. I'd like to see all of the money that's going to the Democrat insurance companies. You know, the insurance companies are making a fortune. They're up 1,700% and more. Obamacare was set up, and I said it right from the beginning, for the benefit of the health insurance companies, of the insurance companies. They're making billions and billions of dollars. Their stock is through the roof. I don't want to give them anything. I want all money going to the people and let the people buy their own health care. It'll be unbelievable. They'll do a great job. They'll get much better health care at a much lower cost.
So I guess he sort of wants to end subsidies and just turn, basically just, we'll talk with Brian about what his idea is there. There are a bunch of different ideas that Republicans have been kicking around to try to stave off the increase. You can put up B2 here. We were expecting a vote tomorrow in the House of Representatives. It looks, Mike Johnson saying no, because we're not ready for that. You can put up B3. Jake Sherman prowling around Capitol Hill. He reports the deal between House GOP moderates and House Republican leadership is breaking down. Disagreement over the language in the amendment to extend Obamacare premium subsidies. So the 4 will go to Rules Tuesday to offer their amendment. If they're rejected, that means they will be free agents. This is Fitzgibbon, Kiggins, Vallejo, and Lawler, which matters because a lot of them are up for re-election and have tight races. What he's saying is if they become free agents, that could put Hakeem Jeffries' 3-year ACA extension over the finish line if you get enough Republicans to join with Democrats. Now, Ro Khanna was recently on Fox News making the pitch for a bolder plan, Medicare for All. It's Ro Khanna, and then we'll go to Brian.
The high cost of the Democrats' health care plan did not work.
That's just not true. Look, private health insurance is what's bankrupting America. It was happening before the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act helped slow the growth of private insurance. But of course, it's not the solution. The solution, as everyone knows, in my view, who studied this, is Medicare for all. People should have national health insurance. Health care is a human right. You should not be subject to these private insurance companies that have 18% administrative costs, that are making billions of dollars of profits, whose executives are making millions of dollars. They're hurting our manufacturing. It's one of the reasons jobs are offshored. They're hurting workers' pay going up. They're sucking out money from our economy, and they're denying people care. Even people on the MAGA right have recognized that the system is not working. The system is broken. It's time to get Medicare for all in this country.
Well, we're excited to be joined now, as we've teased long enough, Brian Blais, who is founder of the Paragon Health Institute, and really at the center of this policy conversation on the right, and more broadly, as Mike Johnson seeks to strike a deal. So thank you so much for joining us, Brian.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, maybe you could start just by telling us a little bit from your perspective of where things stand right now, because I'm sure you're hearing what's going to happen or what people want to happen. What's your prediction, based on what you're hearing, of how this all ends up before year's end?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on. And just let me explain exactly what the situation is before the Congress.
Perfect.
So Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, took effect in 2014. It's mainly affected the individual market for health insurance, which is where people go that don't get a plan from their employer or through a government program. Its regulations significantly increased the price of insurance, and it contained large subsidies to help people afford the coverage that the government regulations had made more expensive. Those subsidies are permanent. They mean that the taxpayer pays a very large share of the premium. In 2021, as a pandemic measure, Democrats used reconciliation and they passed an expansion of subsidies. They put those subsidies in place for 2 years, and then in 2022, they extended them through 2025. So at issue is the expiration of these enhanced COVID-era subsidies. If they expire, the typical Obamacare enrollee would still have very large subsidies. In fact, the subsidy would cover more than 80% of the premium for a typical enrollee. Now, there are some people who would face significantly higher premiums. That is because the law originally capped the subsidies for people making less than 4 times the poverty line. Now, that's a small number of Obamacare enrollees. It's only about 6% of Obamacare enrollees.
People making less?
Only about 6% of enrollees have income above 400% of the poverty line. So most of the examples that you see from Democrats right now on people that face high premiums because these COVID-era subsidies expire, they are for individuals right above 4 times the poverty line. But for the vast majority of people, the government is going to pay the vast majority of the premium next year. Now, I think these subsidies—
Poverty line is what? 40? For a family of 4, 60?
For a family of 4, the federal poverty line is about $30,000.
For a family of 4?
For a family of 4.
So we're talking 120,000. So if you make more
Correct.
than 120,000 for a family of 4, then you're getting hit with that.
Then you would face the higher premiums.
Okay.
Right. So, but 95%, about 95% of enrollees would maintain subsidies, and the subsidies would cover, on average, about 80% of the premium. Now, one of the problems from the enhanced subsidies, they made coverage fully subsidized for a share of enrollees. And what we have seen is that far more people report that they have income to receive those fully subsidized enrollees. So we have done research that estimates that about a quarter of all of the Obamacare exchange enrollees are improper. They don't meet the eligibility requirements. Many people—
Because you have to have how much income?
So this is between 100 and 150 of the federal poverty line. The COVID-era subsidies made that coverage fully subsidized, and almost half of all Obamacare enrollees claim that their income is in that narrow band. What we did at Paragon was look at signups in that income range with the actual people that have income in that range who would be eligible for the program. And we estimate 6.4 million people are enrolled in a fully subsidized plan who don't have that coverage. There's been pretty sophisticated schemes to enroll people because, again, these subsidies, to the president's point, they go directly to the health insurance companies. So if people don't have to pay any premium, that is a reason for people to sign up. And brokers have developed pretty sophisticated schemes to get people, get their information, to get them enrolled. So there's millions of people that have been enrolled that aren't aware of their coverage. Now, if we've enrolled a lot of people that aren't aware of their coverage, one thing that you might expect is a lot of people don't use their health plan. In August, CMS released information on the number of enrollees in Obamacare that didn't use their health plan a single time in 2024. and it was 12 million people. So 35% of all enrollees in the market didn't use their health plan a single time. So we think there's.
Do you think they got paid? Like, does the broker say, here, if you get $1,000 up front to sign up? Like, how does it? Like, why would you sign up for insurance and then not use it?
So there were sophisticated social media campaigns. They advertised cash and gift cards if people would call a number. People called the number, they asked for the cash and gift card. They gave their information. They didn't get cash, they didn't get a gift card. They got signed up for an Obamacare plan. The epicenter of the fraud, South Florida is like the epicenter of
always.
fraud. So it
put bars around all of South Florida.
It's the worst in South Florida. And actually DOJ just a couple of weeks ago closed the case. 2 brokers committed massive fraud like this. The main beneficiaries are the health insurance companies because they're getting monthly payments on behalf of people that aren't enrolled in coverage and that aren't using
the best kind of customer who doesn't take your product.
That's right. Yeah. So these 2 brokers, the amount of improper subsidies just from these 2 individuals was $230 million. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Rick Scott's like, that's real money.
There's something. Well, okay, so on that point, this explains a bit about why Republicans are hesitant. There's some obviously real problems, and it explains a bit why Republicans are hesitant to just rubber stamp an extension of the deal. There are all kinds of political questions going into a midterm cycle that are different from the policy questions and that. But what then, Brian, do you think actually could be done? Because we're almost at year's end here. There's going to be an increase for some people, as you just explained. What could or should be done from your perspective when Republicans have such narrow margins? Democrats are pushing, as we heard from Congressman Khanna, Medicare for all. What are you thinking right now should happen in the next couple of weeks if there is anything to be done to stop people from getting higher costs right away?
Yeah, so I think there's action that's needed in the next couple of weeks, and then there's the development of sort of free market health plan. I think what the Senate passed, Finance Committee Chairman Crapo and Health Committee Chairman Cassidy introduced legislation that would redesign a portion of the Obamacare subsidies. It would open up the cheapest type of Obamacare plan to more enrollees, and it would take these enhanced subsidies and do what the president is advocating, direct them to individuals as HSA contributions rather than as payments directly to health insurance companies. I think that legislation, there's a lot to like about that. I think what the House is looking at doing today is to further expand options for small businesses, allow them to join together to get some of the regulatory advantages that large employers get when they offer coverage. So I testified in front of the Senate Finance Committee about a month ago. I suggested 9 ways that Republicans could, from expanding health savings accounts to addressing some structural flaws with the Obamacare subsidies and to opening up different coverage options that they could do in the near term. Fundamentally, I think the worst thing that Congress could do is throw good money after bad. The way to guarantee that we don't reform a very inefficient program and sector of the economy is just to continue to over-subsidize it, because that reduces the pressure for real fixes. And we have a healthcare affordability crisis in the U.S. I don't think it's right to just shift all those costs to the American taxpayer.
We could put B5 up on the screen just to make that point. This is a Gallup poll. The headline here is "Cost Leads Americans' Top of Mind Healthcare Concerns." So to the point Brian just made, people agree. Everyone basically agrees this is one of the top stressors on the economy and individual families' budgets.
And then if we can put up the final one too, so put up B6. When Obamacare was passed, you were sitting at about 30%, a little over 30% said that they would prefer a government-run system. Obamacare, rejected the public option, rejected Medicare for all, rejected even a Medicare buy-in for people 55 and over. It was very close to being included. Joe Lieberman pulled it out at the last second. And so people have gotten this interaction with a bastardized version of a private system, which is the only thing we have actually around the world, right? There's no pure kind of private healthcare system that I know of outside of, in a kind of developed country. Maybe I'm
outside of Singapore.
Outside of Singapore. I don't know much about Singapore health policy. You can teach us more about that. But as I was listening to you talk about the brokers and the scams and the fraud and how complicated this system is, and you're asked, and I assume the reason that you can fudge it is that they ask you ahead of time, what's your income going to be for the next year? Well, I don't know. Most people are like, I don't know. Like, if some people are like, this is my salary, I hope I don't get fired, so I expect this to be but maybe I will get fired and I will fit in, and I will fit into this nice little band where I get all the subsidies. Or you just kind of game it and like, I guess I'm gonna make this. Or we could just do Medicare for all and then focus on the fraud. Like, put a ton of money into, like, if these chatbots and this AI, the LLMs are good for anything, they should be able to find this fraud. Like you guys, you have a couple interns and you compared the number of people that exist, right, in this economic band and the number of people claiming the subsidies in that band, and you're like, this doesn't match. You would think our LLMs could help us with that. And then say, okay, Medicare for all, we're gonna make this simple. So people don't go around not knowing that they have insurance. You know because you're American, you've got it. Like, why don't we just do that and be done with all of this?
Well, I think of how much government has already screwed up, and the fact that you get the example out of Minnesota recently with that Medicaid fraud and dramatically increasing autism, paying parents to diagnose their children
you're gonna have,
with autism.
it's going to be a constant cat and mouse game. Americans are very clever, and so are the newer Americans.
I think fundamentally the problem with healthcare policy is that the individual consumer and patient is not in control. So only about 10% of spending that people make on healthcare comes directly from them. Most of our expenditures come from third parties, whether it's government programs, whether it's insurance that takes the form of an employer-sponsored insurance plan. We have created a market that is not responsive to the individual consumer and patient. So it meets the needs of the insurance company, it meets the needs of the government program, it's not responsible to the individual. We have no idea what prices are, right? Prices in most sectors of the economy, that's what coordinates behavior. And we know how to value things relative to other things, but prices are basically just made up. Nobody has any idea. And people don't have any incentives to care about what the prices are. So I think fundamentally what we need to do is address these problems with government programs that have centralized control and power in the hands of the intermediaries and the middlemen, and return as much control to the individual as possible so that they can choose the care and coverage that works for them, and so the healthcare providers, the doctors, the nurses are serving actual patients and meeting their needs.
The reason I'm cynical about that is not just because of what most people say, which is that healthcare can't be a normal market because if you don't buy the thing, you could die. And so that, creates an imbalanced amount of leverage in the transactional relationship between you and the person who holds your life in their hands. But
pre-existing conditions.
Yeah. But setting that aside, the United States government doesn't seem to care about markets anywhere else. Like in every other industry, we're okay with a monopoly or an oligopoly, whether it's airlines or youth sports or beef or poultry, or actually it's harder to find an industry that we haven't allowed to consolidate into just one or two producers and that set prices. And so then we're expected to believe that, oh no, when it comes to healthcare, which makes up a third of the economy or something, we promise we're going to do strong antitrust enforcement and we're going to really crack down on the giant scammers. There were the medical providers, and we're not going to let private equity just roll this up and have giant companies, let 3 companies control the entire healthcare industry and then set prices. And so then you have a situation where it's not just like beef, because like with beef, okay, you got 4 beef companies that control everything. I guess I could eat less beef. Maybe go eat some chicken and some more soybeans or whatever. But when it comes to healthcare, it's like, no, you're going to have to pay the piper. And the U.S. government, I just don't trust to not make it so there's like 3 pipers.
I don't trust the U.S. government either. I do think in some places it'd be great if we would have 4 competitors. We have produced a lot of local hospital monopolies. In certain
Exactly,
areas.
right.
Local hospital monopolies are a real problem.
Right, so why are those
I would
hospitals going to...
Well, what I would look is where's the government policy that incentivizes consolidation and reduces competition in the market. A really good example comes from the Medicare program. Medicare pays much more for the same service delivered in a hospital than if it's delivered in a physician's office. What does that lead to? That leads to incentives for hospitals and physicians to sell out, so the hospital acquires the physician practice, and then you have an integrated healthcare system, and you've reduced competition
more,
in that area. There are examples where we've allowed market forces to work in healthcare and consumerism to work, of people making cost-conscious decisions and driving healthcare services to lower-cost providers, and those lower-cost the high-cost providers don't want to lose consumers, so they do lower their prices. So we do have examples. They are too few and far between, unfortunately. But I think where I want to go is what can we address in government policy that reduces consumer control and leads to these incentives for additional consolidation.
And just zooming in on the politics of this quickly, I think one of the reasons that Republicans, and you'll know this better than I do, never landed on a consensus repeal and replace plan is that they never landed on consensus. There was never something that brought everybody together, everyone from John McCain to Marco Rubio at the time in the Senate. So do you feel that as these conversations are happening now, and it seems to me, again, this is probably a frustration you've had for much longer, but that Republicans just keep putting healthcare on the back burner while voters say this is on our front burner, this is the thing that is like eating us up. Right now, this has forced the conversation. Do you think Republicans are getting anywhere close to a consensus, either tweak, as you say, before the end of the year, and then big fix in the new year? Or is it still just kind of we're going to tinker around the edges, do what we can when the crunch is on, and hope that it doesn't come up again before we absolutely have to have some type of comprehensive solution?
Yeah, so I do think conservatives have to do a better job on healthcare policy. I mean, it's one of the reasons that I founded Paragon was because there was a gap on the free market side on healthcare policy, and like you said, I mean, healthcare is 20% of the economy. We needed, and the healthcare sector system is not working for most Americans, so we need policies. I think that there are, they recognize that Obamacare hasn't made healthcare more affordable. I think there's widespread agreement that just continuing to throw good money after bad and propping up an inefficient regulatory structure is unwise policy. I think there is agreement on how we should expand options and make some improvements on the margin on Obamacare. And I think what we have to do is one comprehensive plan I don't think is the right strategy. I think the right strategy is to look at what's not working, correctly diagnose the problem. Like I mentioned on Medicare paying much more for hospital services than doctor services. That's a bipartisan problem. It's recognized by Democrats and Republicans. Now, who's the main obstacle to getting that policy through? It's hospitals. Hospitals are very powerful. If you look at the American Enterprise Institute has what they call a chart of the century, and it looks at the price increases by economic sector since 2000. The number one, the highest growing price inflation is hospitals. That to me is where we have our main healthcare affordability problem, is we need to drive down hospital prices in the U.S. And these site-neutral payments in Medicare should be a starting point, but it's going to require reformers to go and combat the healthcare industry.
What do you think is going to happen? Do you think that these 4 Republicans or more will join with Democrats and pass the 3-year extension in the House? And if it does it have a shot in the Senate?
I do not. So I don't know if they'll join with Democrats and pass an extension. I do not think that is a realistic policy. I mean,
right, but we've been doing unrealistic policy for decades. So,
well, I don't think there's not going to be a clean extension of the subsidies. I mean, I think there's so many problems with the subsidies. The fraud is one major problem. There's not going to be a clean extension of these COVID era credits. I mean, there might be some compromise out there. I think there's certainly a way to deal with the problem for the people that I mentioned just above 4 times the poverty line. Like, that is a relatively cheap fix. You would allow the enhanced subsidies to expire for people below 4 times the poverty line who still get very generous underlying Obamacare subsidies. You deal with the cliff that was created for people just above 4 times the poverty line, and you introduce some reforms to address the cost drivers in Obamacare.
Yeah.
So interesting. And just like you said, Republicans had such a gap on this. So we appreciate you coming in, Brian, and helping walk us through. We'll have to have you back on to talk about Singapore's healthcare system. Now I'm curious.
I want to hear more about this. Yes.
My appetite has been piqued. All right. Thank you, Brian Blais, founder of Paragon. Appreciate being here.
Thank you. So I think a friend of Donald Trump's must have told him that he was losing the capacity to shock people with his Truth Social posts. And so in the last few days, he shocked the entire world with his response to the brutal murder of Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle. Now is following it up with one of the most unhinged remarks he's made about Venezuela yet. We could put up this Truth Social post. We'll read this entire thing. He says, Venezuela is completely surrounded by the largest armada ever assembled in the history of South America. I'll pause on that to note, are you really invoking the Spanish here? Like, what are you doing? He says, it will only get bigger, and the shock to them will be like nothing they have ever seen before. Until such time as they return to the United States of America, all of the oil, land, and other assets that they previously stole from us. Yes, Venezuela stole our oil, land, and other assets. The illegitimate Maduro regime is using oil from these stolen oil fields to finance themselves. The horror. Drug terrorism, human trafficking, murder, and kidnapping for the theft of our assets and many other reasons, including terrorism, drug smuggling, and human trafficking. The Venezuelan regime has been designated a foreign terrorist organization. Therefore, today, I am ordering a total and complete blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers going into and out of Venezuela. The illegal aliens and criminals that the Maduro regime has sent into the United States during the weak and inept Biden administration are being returned to Venezuela at a rapid pace. America will not allow criminals, terrorists, or other countries to rob, threaten, or harm our nation, and likewise will not allow a hostile regime to take our oil, land, or any other assets, all of which must be returned to the United States immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. I don't understand how Venezuela could return land to us promptly. I understand the oil thing. Like, there was a meme during the occupation of Iraq that said, how did our oil get under their sand?
It beats me.
But however it got under there, we're going over there and we're taking it back.
Someone's got to find out.
I understand the oil part. The land? How did Venezuela take our land? Jesse Waters, we talked about, I think it was last week, said, South America is ours. It's in the name, America.
America.
Maybe that's what he means?
It's not that hard. It's America.
Now, ironically, Trump recently seized Venezuelan assets. They seized an oil tanker. We seized Citgo. Like, we took their oil company. Now we're going to. Now they took our land.
I mean, also another part of that where he's saying, on the one hand, Maduro sent criminals into the United States during the Biden administration. On the other hand, Maduro is a vicious dictator. These two things are in conflict because what's actually happening is that Maduro is a dictator and people fled Maduro to come into the United States, which is why there's debate among the Republican Party over whether or not to grant asylum to people who, in the case of many Venezuelans, not all of them, actually is pretty sound for asylum, fleeing the Maduro regime. There were real reasons for people to be fleeing the Maduro regime, just as though there were real reasons for people to be fleeing Cuba over the last several decades. And so on the one hand, Trump is acting as though this was intentionally set up by Maduro to infiltrate the United States. But on the other hand, Maduro's so bad, well, if Maduro is so bad, then it stands to reason people are going to flee into the United States, which is exactly what happened. It's similar to the trafficking narrative that they're trying to build. Of course, I think there's pretty significant evidence that there are state actors in the trafficking, and many people would argue there were state actors on our side in the trafficking as well.
Of course.
But that's the argument the United States government is making. But to say that this was intentional, that the migration from Venezuela into the United States was an intentional invasion, infiltration, they're doing the same thing with drugs. And actually what's happened is that people are poor and desperate and are trying to make money or trying to get to a better country. And so that actually confirms the administration's argument about Maduro being a dictator. But of course, they're trying to have it both ways.
And already a couple tankers apparently have been turned around because they're nervous about getting caught up in this American-Spanish Armada, which is throwing the Venezuelan economy into complete and total turmoil. Like, it was already deeply struggling under this incredible tightening regime of sanctions that we have going on there, and as well as the collapse of oil prices over the last decade. Which was kind of propping up the Chavista socialism project. What that's going to do is create, like you said, an outflow of migration, as well as create starvation and suffering and misery. And,
which there's plenty of already.
And create instability. Part of this, there's a right-wing movement going on now in South and Central America. You've had the right-wing win elections in Ecuador, Honduras, Chile, Bolivia recently, and a significant, non-trivial amount of that is there were 8 million Venezuelans who
getting into Chile,
poured out of into lots of other countries. Like 500,000 or so came to the U.S.
Yep,
it's another 7.5 million went elsewhere around, and that generally throughout world history has created kind of a right-wing pull. So when I first saw this news, I was like, Maduro, you want to call him a dictator or not, he's offering to step down in exchange for lifting of the sanctions and not drone striking him, and offering to let American oil companies come in. He's basically saying, what do you want?
Well, he doesn't want what Trump is threatening to bring down right now.
He doesn't want to be killed.
Yeah,
and so why? I don't understand why Trump won't just say yes. Okay, you get your regime change, you get the oil, you get everything. But you don't get, I guess, a war. The only thing I can think of is, and this is no, this can't be what he's doing. Maybe he misses a border crisis. The border is very calm right now. And maybe to Trump, he needs a crisis at the border. And so he's like, oh, I need to create an enormous amount of instability and suffering in Venezuela so I can drive more people to the border. And then in 2026, point to the caravans of the people at the border and be like, Democrats, I don't know quite how you finish that equation, but Democrats, scary brown people, you have to vote for me. It hasn't worked in the past, when he had the big caravan in 2018 that didn't help him. What on earth is he doing?
Well, correct me if I remember, but Maduro has said his counter offer, part of it is allowing his him to handpick a successor who would reign in power for a couple of years, right?
And while there's elections, and that successor would not run for re-election.
Right. My guess is that if there was any chance of Donald Trump himself cutting a deal with Maduro, that's probably a brick wall in the negotiations. But I think that's a simpler
They're just going to put the Nobel Peace Prize winning Machado forcibly on the throne? No.
But that's what...
She has no base at all.
But that's what I was going to say. The simpler explanation is that you have to think about this as President Marco Rubio as opposed to President Donald Trump. And President Marco Rubio doesn't want... knows that the United States, to paraphrase the Zelensky conversation, holds all of the cards here, except for the American people largely not wanting this, but wants to make a point and wants absolutely no quarter, wants absolutely no remnant, which is impossible, but wants absolutely no remnant of the left, the socialist left, or the whatever you want to call it in Venezuela.
It's a country that has a left.
Yes, and has convinced Trump. I mean, we saw just a couple of days ago, Trump declared fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction, that this could lay the groundwork for potential military action in Mexico. Because if you're declaring fentanyl WMD, there's all kinds of legal questions about what that actually means, what that actually does. But that's laying the groundwork for Mexico. That has nothing to do. I mean, we're talking about cocaine in Venezuela, and so that's
amount of it,
I think that's the best guess is because Trump does like making deals, but I think he has basically outsourced this to Marco Rubio.
And about half of, so if we manage the transition, then we can approve, who becomes, interim president leading into the elections, and then we can get somebody who's friendlier to the United States. If we don't manage the process, if we just drive some kind of chaotic regime change, about half of Maduro's deputies are much friendlier to China than they are to us.
Yeah, and that's why.
And so you might get one of them instead.
Which is why I think Rubio wants to do a total takeover.
With what? Like, who's gonna? Like Machado and what army? Like, you're really gonna you're gonna occupy Venezuela?
I don't know if
with the U.S. Army.
Part of the Susie Wiles, we'll talk more about this in a second, but part of the Susie Wiles Vanity Fair story, I'm sure this jumped out to you as well. She's saying, we know who's on those boats. We have the CIA. I'm paraphrasing it, obviously, but she says that to Chris Whipple in the Vanity Fair article. And with what army is a great question, always has been a great question. Could have learned that lesson during the Bay of Pigs, but it's, I imagine, intelligence coming from the CIA, which we know has been authorized to operate on the ground in Venezuela by the president, probably saying, you can do this, because that's what happens every damn time. You have the people, you have the weak links in the military. You can do it, and that's my best guess as to why there's the full bravado for complete and total regime change, is that they're once again convinced that it's doable and that anything short of that just gives a foothold or leaves a foothold for China and Iran and the new axis of evil.
And meanwhile, Trump is going to get somebody killed in the air, put up C2. So for the second time, civilian aircraft nearly collided, this time with a U.S. Air Force tanker, because all of these American Armada planes are flying around the Caribbean with their transponders off, not communicating with air traffic controllers. And as he said, it's the largest force, maybe ever, that's been in there. And so you have civilian aircraft constantly going through there. And, it's a big sky, and hopefully that none of them go down, but this is extremely reckless and dangerous, and nobody is asking for it. He hasn't even bothered to try to lie much about it. This whole weapons of mass destruction fentanyl thing is offensively lazy. This is what you
It is.
Maybe it's we can do whatever we want.
Well, yeah, and I think the best way to think about the Venezuela policy is just, again, President Marco Rubio. I think Trump is not as interested as Marco Rubio is in this Venezuela regime change. He's been brought on board with it because he can use it from a kind of PR perspective to say this is the crackdown on drugs, even though that is going to be digested by most Americans to be related to fentanyl, and this is clearly not related to fentanyl. So anyway, all that is to say, the tripwires right now, when you have CIA operating on the ground in Venezuela, when you have the Armada, as Trump put it, that is, we are in the middle of a recipe for escalation, and that Americans could be dying in battle over Venezuela.
And Americans could crash into the sea.
Yes, yeah.
And they took out another drug boat, alleged drug boat, just recently. And meanwhile, Hegseth is saying he will not show the video that he is so proud of, where they executed these two survivors. And he says absolutely the right battle decision. He keeps calling it a battle. It's not a battle. They're basically unarmed, and you're sitting in Florida, hitting them with the drone.
They're not coming and shooting at Americans. They are, by their own admission, they're trafficking cocaine. allegedly trafficking cocaine.
And without outboard motors to get to the United States. Like they're going somewhere.
Suriname or wherever.
Mexico, somewhere. They're not going to they're not making it to the United States with that.
Yeah.
Eventually, maybe they will. A lot of like cocaine users are hoping they do. It's
right.
like, bro, like this is what we do here in the United States. Why are you killing our suppliers?
But to compare it to kinetic battle.
Right, and so he's so proud of it, and he would make the decision 1,000 times again. But no, you can't actually see the footage of it. And we've destroyed footage of similar strikes. So we move on to Susie Wiles.
Let's move on to Susie Gate Day 2. Day 2. Believe it or not, we are on Susie Gate Day 2. Here we go. Donald Trump has responded to Susie Wiles' shocking 11 interviews with Vanity Fair that were reported out in a 2-part series yesterday that absolutely stunned Washington. Everybody was trying to figure out exactly what happened here. Trump was asked by the New York Post if he stands by Susie Wiles after she was quoted in Vanity Fair saying he has a, quote, alcoholic's personality. Trump basically is like, yep, yeah. Spot the lie. Sounds about right. And, you know, Ryan, I actually think of all of the Wiles quotes to pull out and say this is problematic or super newsworthy, that is the least of almost all of them in this long 2-part series from Chris Whipple in Vanity Fair. Because, again, like he's self-deprecating and he understands what she means by that. I think we kind of all understand what she means by that.
Right.
So, of course, it's interesting to see her talking like that about her boss in a liberal media outlet, but also I think it just speaks to, like, Trump understands when you call him things like that. It's like, what did he say to Zoran? He's like, I've been called much worse than a despot.
Much worse than despot, Trump famously doesn't drink, but he has said, and he said again, if he did, he has an addictive personality. He likely would have become an alcoholic. His brother was, which is a formative experience in his own life. He has the big personality and the wild mood swings of that kind of person, which Wiles talked about. Kind of like a dry drunk who was never a drunk. I mean, Caroline Leavitt was asked what went wrong. Let's get a response on Fox here.
I wanted to ask you, Caroline, about the 2-part series of articles in Vanity Fair on Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, and the president's inner circle. I mean, clearly there was a lot of cooperation between the White House and Vanity Fair on this because there's numerous interviews that Susie Wiles had with the writer over the course of pretty much a year. Portraits were taken of his inner circle, including her, J.D. Vance, Stephen Miller. I mean, it looks like the White House was working hand in glove with Vanity Fair, and yet here's Susie Wiles' reaction to the series of articles. Quote, the article published early this morning is a disingenuously framed hit piece on me and the finest president, White House staff, and cabinet in history. Significant context was disregarded, and much of what I and others said about the team and the president was left out of the story. I assume after reading it that this was done to paint an overwhelmingly chaotic and negative narrative about the president and our team. She goes on after that. You can read the full thing on X, but what happened? What went wrong?
Well, look, I would just echo my boss, Susie Wiles, who is the best chief of staff in our nation's history, working for the greatest president in our nation's history, and that this was, unfortunately, another attempt at fake news by a reporter who was acting disingenuously and really did take the chief's words out of context. But I think most importantly, the bias of omission was ever present throughout this story. The reporter omitted all of the positive things that Susie and our team said about the president and the inner workings of the White House. And as Susie said today, it's deeply unfortunate that happened, but it won't distract us from making America great again. And President Trump has been such a productive president and has accomplished more in 11 months than most presidents do in 8 years because of his vision and his tenacity, which is executed on and facilitated by our great White House chief of staff, Susie Wiles, whom I'm very proud of to call a boss and a mentor and a friend.
The whole taken out of context and the whole you didn't include all the good things we did is so silly because nobody reads the articles anyway. So like even if they included from the administration's perspective all the amazing things that they think that they did, people would just pull out the quotes and circulate them on TikTok and and Twitter and talk about them.
Well, and it's non-responsive to John Roberts' question, which is basically like,
were you
why
thinking?
is the White House cooperating? Why would Susie Wiles, the White House chief of
we
staff?
know that's how Vanity Fair did the story.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, you all are more aware than any administration in history of how the media works, and you are like probably the most sharp or ardent, you're probably the most ardent opponents of the media in history of presidential administrations, and that's a high bar. So why would you ever allow for 11 long interviews? Why would your chief of staff, who, by the way, in a stroke of complete irony, is the one person who's seen as Trump's gatekeeper, the only person who has successfully sort of kept Trump in line, meaning you're not letting random articles from like Gateway Pundit being printed out and put on his desk. You're not letting random like Laura Loomer into the Oval Office. Reportedly, Susie Wiles is the one. Laura Loomer was at the White House last night, by the way, but is the one who sort of keeps that type of thing at arm's length.
Loomer was at the White House last night?
Yeah, I think it was for a Hanukkah celebration. But anyway, moving on. Trump announced her engagement. You haven't seen this video? We're actually not moving on.
No, and so we got, and so he also announced like banning Palestinians from the country. Is this a coincidence or?
Great question. But this is the irony of ironies, is that Susie Wiles is the person who is like the gatekeeper of media access. And Susie Wiles is the person then who was giving 11 interviews. My best theory on this is that she, for as shrewd of an operator as she reportedly is, probably thought she was off the record or would have quote approval or something like that from the journalist, whether it was a miscommunication or naivete on her part. I doubt that it was naivete. We're going to get into one second about the validity of the quotes themselves, but the Caroline Levitt point here is to emphasize there was a massive circling of the wagons yesterday. Now, we can put this next element, D3, up on the screen. This is all like cabinet secretaries, people from every corner of Trump world going on the record in defense of Susie Wiles yesterday. And so there's this question hanging in the air when Crystal and Sagar covered the story, because the revelation that Susie Wiles had said all of these things and spoken 11 times with this Vanity Fair reporter. Is she out? Is she going to be out of a job? Because Trump is going to look at this as disloyal. It's going to look like a massive error in judgment from the one person who is supposed to have the best judgment in the administration. And then we pretty quickly, within a couple of hours, got an answer to that question, and it's no. And that question was important because that means the Trump White House without Susie Wiles would likely look more like the first administration. It would probably start to become even more chaotic. If you think it's chaotic now, it would probably become even more chaotic. But circling the wagons happened. Susie Wiles seems to be perfectly safe in her job for now. Let's put D4 up on the screen. This gets into the validity of what actually happened here. So Wiles said it was ridiculous in an interview with the New York Times that she would have commented on Elon Musk and ketamine.
Well, which is, I don't know, why is that ridiculous?
Yeah, it sounds like something someone would
commented on it. But anyway, go ahead.
Right. Well, the author of the Vanity Fair story, according to the New York Times, played a recording for the Times where Susie Wiles is heard saying that quote.
So shockingly, the thing she was quoted saying, she actually did say.
So if there are any people, so Wiles said he was, quote, an avowed ketamine user, a, quote, odd duck.
But she is.
But all of these things.
He is an odd
defensible.
Duck. She calls him brilliant. The full quote is odd duck, like a lot of brilliant people are, or something like that.
Yes.
He is an odd duck.
Right.
Would anybody say that's a normal duck?
No, a normal duck.
It's not a normal duck.
You should make T-shirts, drop set T-shirts. Just say normal duck. But anyway, so this is like, you can see how Susie Wiles is in a probably very friendly back and forth with a Vanity Fair reporter, maybe thinks she's going to have quote approval, maybe thinks she's on background or something, and is saying what everybody talks about privately when it comes to Elon Musk over the course of the last year, and it ends up in print, tries to say it didn't happen. So if there were any people in the administration who were saying, we think some of these quotes are fully made up, this revelation from the New York Times that the author has the recordings, that's not ideal. Well, Susie obviously said these things, but the question of the context, I don't doubt, and I don't think either of us doubts, that some of these things probably are more sensational. There's context left out that might make them more sensational than they actually were in conversation. But that's what journalists do. It's you have your principal, the White House chief of staff, saying something. It's probably going to be sensationalized in print, which is why you don't talk to Vanity Fair if you're Susie Wiles.
And a main thing we really just learned is that she has the same thoughts as most Americans on most of these people. Which, like, when it came to J.D. Vance, for instance, she's like, yeah, I think his conversion from, like, never Trumper to pro-Trump was kind of political in a way.
Right.
It's like, okay, so you're willing to just not lie about that conversion. When it comes to who's the like complete lunatic over at OMB?
Russ?
Yes, Russ Vogt.
Oh, okay.
She's like, yeah, that guy's a complete lunatic.
She called him a zealot.
She called him a hard right-wing zealot.
Russ Vogt, Russ Vogt is, I think anybody on the right would tell you Russ Vogt is a hard right-wing zealot. And MAGA people would be like, hell yeah.
Yeah, he is. Last night, he said he's shutting down the atmospheric measurement agency that's based out of Colorado because he said they've been doing climate alarmism for too long. So, like, yeah, this guy is a total right-wing revolutionary.
Revolutionary, there you go. Yeah.
Counter-revolutionary. Yeah. But we'd have to have a revolution to have a counter-revolutionary. He's out there, and she agrees with that. She said that
we had a revolution after Woodrow Wilson. Okay, we don't have to get into this.
She said she thought it was a little bit nuts for Trump to pardon every single January 6er, and she was overruled on that. She said it was nuts for Musk to completely eliminate Doge and put at risk all the people that were getting PEPFAR and the AIDS treatment. So like, and that she immediately then scrambled to do everything she could to rescue the best parts of USAID. So like we, and we also got her defense of like RFK Jr. She's like, he's not a kook, but my kook or something, whatever, something like that. And that, you need somebody who's, gonna maybe, is he pushing too hard? Yeah, maybe he is, but you have to do that to like get back to balance. So you got some real insight into kind of like, who she is and what her politics are. I wouldn't read too much into the defenses though of her, because as up until the second that she is chief of staff, she's the gatekeeper and she's in charge. And if you work for her, you praise her.
You praise her, yeah.
Like whether you agree with it or not. And maybe you praise her in public and privately you're working to get her out.
Although, rebuttal to that just quickly is that if you think Trump is pissed at her, you don't praise her. So that's where I think it was safe to read a bit into it, is that they wouldn't have gone out, because it's Trump and then her. And so if it was being telegraphed to them that Trump was furious about what Susie did.
I think once Trump defended, then it's like, all right, let's all get in the pool.
Let's jump on in. And finally, another reason you see Fox asking Caroline Leavitt, like, what? You clearly cooperated very closely with Vanity Fair because they did these photo shoots, and then of course like made the photos look as unflattering as is humanly possible. We can put this up on the screen, last element here. This is the Trump team. You see James Blair, you see Dan Scavino, Stephen Miller, Susie Wiles, Caroline Leavitt, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio. It's interesting to me that you have two cabinet secretaries in this picture with like staffers. Not that Stephen Miller is just a mere staffer, but he is a staffer. He's not in the cabinet. So I thought that was actually kind of interesting in and of itself. I mean, it's clearly Trump's inner circle among people who are at the White House. Do we have the Bush one
to compare it to?
Yes, we do. This immediately reminded people of another photo shoot. Ryan, what do you think?
Do we have any staffers there? Who we got in the back?
Yeah, we do. So we've got, actually, this is mostly, you're right, this is mostly...
well, Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, Vice President, President.
That's Andy Card.
Would you call Condoleezza Rice a staffer? She was what, head of national, NSA?
Depends on what point in the presidency this was, right?
Yeah. What, Andy Card, and then who's the other?
Chief of Staff. Andy Card was Chief of Staff.
But who's the other dude there?
George Tenet.
Oh, CIA boss.
Yeah. So, but look at that, power poses all around.
I did one of those for Politico magazine.
No way.
The Intercept. I think it was a profile of us in like 2019 after like the AOC election.
Really? Is it still around?
Oh, yeah. Go Google like Politico Intercept 2019 or something.
It's a dangerous thing to pose for.
It was fine. We look. Mehdi was still with us, so he's in the picture.
Oh, I see it. Oh my gosh, you're doing the crossed arms and everything. This is so funny.
We'll add it in post.
We're adding this in post. You look intimidating.
Right? Yeah. Look out.
I'm scared.
If you're a corporate Democrat in 2019, you were.
This guy's got his sleeves rolled up.
Yeah. They asked me to roll the sleeves up. I was like, all right.
They asked you to roll the sleeves up. Oh, that's.
I was like, but I don't do
incredible.
that. They're like, we don't care. Let's do it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, it's a dangerous, I don't know if you caught this, Trump in the Oval Office was, when he had the guys from Minnesota, the Miracle hockey team, and the other day, they had him put on a cowboy hat, and he was like, there was a man named Michael Dukakis. And he was like, he put on the hat, did not go well for him. Yeah, so he's very conscious of these image questions, which we all know. And by the way, the last point I'll make about this big story is, if you don't think people of the White House believe some of these decisions are crazy, then you have not been paying enough attention. You do not understand the right under Trump's Republican Party, because the dissension privately about a lot of these policies is constant.
And she said tariffs
pitched.
too. She was like, I thought his tariff ideas were wrong, and like,
yes,
I didn't want him to roll it out, and it hasn't worked. And
sometimes, by the way, sometimes you see that playing out on camera. There was disagreement in the Trump administration at the time, publicly, between Elon Musk and, Jameson Greer, others, about the tariff policy. And so the story, it's very interesting to see how Wiles is describing it. It's fascinating to see that she did this to a journalist. But just know, this stuff is, of course, what people are thinking behind closed doors, and you can make up your judgment about whether or not that's good or bad, but it's happening.
Last point for people who might be confused. Chris Whipple he's most famous as the author of a book on White House chiefs of staff.
Yes.
And so if I had to guess, she maybe thought that this was coming out after her tenure was over, and maybe her tenure is about to be over.
That's so interesting.
And I think that their first conversation was pre-inauguration, and I think as they continued to have conversations and no article came out, despite her saying kind of controversial things, she got more and more comfortable that, oh yeah, this is coming later. This is not a problem for you now. So I'm just going to be completely honest, and so that I can give my perspective to like the historian of American chiefs of staff of presidents.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
He's not just a normal journalist from Vanity Fair. Like, that's the thing he's known for. So she's speaking to her own legacy.
Yeah, she agrees to give a book interview. And Kushner has recommended this guy's books, by the way. So that's one of the rumors of how maybe this happened that is going around is, did Kushner make everyone feel comfortable?
And she probably has also talked to former chiefs of staff.
Yeah.
Like, what should I know about the job? And they would have spoken well of him because...
Right.
And she probably will in a year.
Principals, you know this better than I do, but principals get afraid about book interviews because you never know how it's actually going to be used and what context it's going to come out in. And so that actually seems like a pretty good theory, too. Yeah.
All right, so let's have some fun with Bari Weiss. So first of all, the New York Times, and we'll talk about this later in the segment, New York Times did a like 30,000 word or something article.
New York Magazine, I was wrong. So this was New York Magazine.
Well, New York Times did a Jeffrey Epstein piece, and we'll talk about that in the back half of this segment. But yes, New York Magazine is out with a new a profile of Bari Weiss's return from the wilderness.
Of Los Angeles.
And we'll also talk about her town hall on Saturday night with Erika Kirk and how poorly the ratings turned out. But so tell us about this New York Magazine profile of Bari Weiss, and like what do we learn about the way that she went from effectively fired but sort of quitting, pushed out of the New York Times, and now at the top of the kind of world of journalism.
Yeah, and if people don't remember, Bari Weiss was pushed out of the New York Times because she was writing journalism that made people uncomfortable over Me Too stuff. There were constant leaks about the New York Times, like internal Slack channel of people just like gossiping about Bari because honestly, a lot of it started with what she was writing on Me Too. And Bill Maher in this New York Magazine article talks about how he read that Me Too piece that Bari wrote. It went pretty viral at the time and said, I'm going to make this woman famous. So he's sort of trying to take credit for Bari Weiss to New York Magazine. But when it all started to crescendo was after the New York Times published that Tom Cotton op-ed, then retracted the Tom Cotton op-ed. The bunch of
Which
staffers
was
at
about,
the time.
he said, send in the guard.
They put the headline on it that said, send in the troops. So it's June of 2020, and it said we should use the Insurrection Act to quell violent protests. It did specifically say violent protests. New York Times staffers posted in unison that the piece put Black New York Times staffers in danger. It became a very, very 2020 controversy. And James Bennett gets fired. Bari kind of self-deports after that to ends up with Nellie Bowles, who was also at the New York Times, a reporter at the New York Times, but married, now they have kids. They were in Los Angeles for a really long time. And what we learned from the story is that her arc at the Times, she'd been at the Journal before, her arc at the Times actually piqued the interest of some people in Los Angeles when she was originally blogging on her Substack called Common Sense, which turned into the Free Press. And this is interesting because there were salon dinners happening reportedly in LA, and I had heard about some of this, I didn't know the extent of it, with CEOs and Hollywood actors where Bari was being sort of commoditized as the hot dinner guest in LA. There was a joke on Curb about it at the time, actually, too, that some people might remember. But she was... People were convening salon-type dinners to have Bari talk about the stifling of free expression and censorship and what was like going on with the left. And this is a lot of rich people. So you can kind of see then how this congealed and built to 2024. And then to the Ellison deal, which brought in the Free Press, because what was happening in the background is as there were struggle sessions literally happening at so many of these corporations, as you would imagine, there was some dissent. And it seemed as though because you had Bari Weiss, this centrist social, I don't even know what you would say. Like I would call her sort of socially liberal, but what does that even mean? I don't know. But you have this like kind of centrist lesbian from mainstream media that made people feel comfortable venting their frustrations with the left. And that builds into Common Sense becoming big, getting major investors at the Free Press. And so the New York Magazine piece tells that story and shows the extent to which it was bringing in extremely rich people, extremely powerful people all around Bari. And it helps us, I think, contextualize what she means to Wall Street, Hollywood, Silicon Valley, which is, she became the go-to.
And and her early career and her college activism was around Israel-Palestine, where she led a bunch of campaigns to try to get Palestinian professors fired. And a lot of people remembered that when she emerged as this like leading cancel culture voice. They're like, wait a minute. The same person who was like literally leading cancel culture before it was a thing, trying to get people fired for their political views, is now saying that you should not try to get people fired for their political views. But she never, in the 2020 to 23 range, she didn't make Zionism or canceling Palestinian professors remotely part of her politics.
Not one bit.
It wasn't. And you can go through her like social media and her writing at the time. It's basically absent from there. And so the thing that the rich people in Los Angeles were really glomming onto was like, oh yeah, somebody who looks young and liberal, but saying things that I agree with.
Right.
And then when they find out later,
it's not Ben Shapiro,
after October 7th, that she's also like a hardcore supporter of Israel and will bend all journalistic norms to defend Israel. They're like, well, that's a wonderful bonus. And so they got the whole package there. So then Ellison winds up getting lunch with her or whatever. They meet, and she's like, and then he talks about poaching her to come to CBS if he ends up buying it. And to her credit, she's like, cool, I'll do it. I'll run it.
Right.
I'm going to be the boss.
And she reports to him, not to the news division. Like she is the head, reporting just to him. And taking a very unusual turn for an executive, turning the camera around right on her. Because she thinks that what the American right apparently wants is more
people like Bari Weiss on the camera.
David Ellison, by the way, just quickly before we move on to the ratings, I think that's where we're about to go. I pulled his FEC record last night. He was, in 2024, a big Dem donor.
Interesting.
And it just makes the point that you were, because apparently it was in 2024 when he met with Bari and started talking about whether they could do some type of merger. And in the piece, it's mentioning how she's getting introduced to Jeff Bezos and some of the richest people who have ever walked the face of the earth. And they are fascinated by her. And it just makes so much more sense that you have this $150 million deal between Paramount and the Free Press, because she's seen as like this giant among journalists by these people who just think she's the best thing since sliced bread, because they had some well-founded fears about illiberalism creeping into the mainstream. The Tom Cotton op-ed was legitimately a bad decision. Retracting that was legitimately a bad decision from the New York Times. And so she then becomes the focal point of that angst. And I think that the story helps everyone make sense. We had this fuzzy knowledge that this was happening, but it really fleshes out exactly how it was happening.
Yeah, and so she comes to CBS News Saturday night. She did a town hall. There was an Army-Navy game leading into the town hall, and the ratings into it absolutely nosedived, and then kind of climbed again after the town hall was over. Glenn Greenwald can put up E2 here, making the point, CBS News has 7 million subscribers on YouTube. Beyond the anemic ratings, they also put Bari's primetime special on their YouTube channel, and it has a grand total of 72,000 views after 2 days, which in fairness to Bari is 10 times more than most Free Press videos get. He also had said, I actually didn't think it was possible to take one of the 3 major TV networks and in prime time drag it down to the lowly ratings level of
He's
CNN.
so catty.
Yet Bari Weiss, in her first on-camera special, managed to accomplish this remarkable feat. And he was sharing a Dylan Byers article there, which we can put up. This is E3. So the numbers coming in, 1.9 total viewers, 1.9 million total viewers is across streaming and broadcast networks. This is CBS's framing of it, is up 32% boost in the CBS time slot, outpacing CBS season to date for Saturdays at 8 p.m. But if you compare it to a year ago, it was down substantially. Now, I will give her credit. It says 185 million views on social. Now, a bunch of those views are made up.
Oh, social views
TikTok,
are bullshit.
Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah,
but
they're bullshit.
Even let's say it's 10% of that. Like we covered it. Like we talked about it.
Yeah.
It was on social media. Like nothing else that CBS News has ever done it like, or CBS has done at 8 p.m. on a Saturday, is actually making hay on social media. Well, now, most people were making fun of it, so I don't know if that's...
Well, people were really talking about it. I mean, it definitely had people engaging in discourse about Erika Kirk. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely newsy. But the question of whether you're able to draw people back to CBS with newsiness, that's the problem she's supposed to be solving, right? She's supposed to be doing like good journalism and the like, but also that's supposed to be a magnet for more and more eyeballs. And that's where you see them boosting those social numbers, but we all know, and I'm sure their executives know, although I'm constantly surprised by how gullible some of these folks are, that Twitter just counts like people scrolling past it as a view sometimes. And I'm sure it's the same is true on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, that you don't have to actually tune into much of it. It could be a couple of seconds to count it as a view. Right. So are you monetizing? And are you, is your influence scaling up with those numbers? That's a huge, huge question. And that's, I think, what Glenn is getting at. You can say season to date going up with a big interview like that. People would probably expect bigger numbers for such a big get. I wasn't surprised by those numbers at all. Erika Kirk is still not, it's not like getting the president.
No, she's everywhere too. Didn't she host The Five?
I don't know.
She guest hosted The Five. There's no shortage of Erika Kirk content if that's your thing. We are running late, so we'll try to do this real quickly, but if you put up E4, new investigation by the New York Times that runs like tens of thousands of words called Scams, Schemes, Ruthless Cons, the untold story of how Jeffrey Epstein got rich. Now, the point of this seemed to be to knock down conspiracy theories. One of their lines in here, in his first 2 decades of business, we found that Epstein was less a financial genius than a prodigious manipulator and liar. Abundant conspiracy theories hold that Epstein worked for spy services or ran a lucrative blackmail operation, but we found a more prosaic explanation for how he built a fortune. Classic New York Times formulation. Abundant conspiracy theorists say X, but we found a thing that is completely non-responsive to that thing.
Yes.
Like, I don't know anybody that's claiming that his blackmail operation was lucrative. Do you know, like, I've never seen somebody say the way he made his money was through a blackmail operation. If you want to talk to the conspiracy theorists,
Yeah, that's
well,
an interesting point.
the blackmail is on behalf of intelligence agencies.
Right.
And also helps him stay out of jail for all of the different crimes that he's committing. Like, that would be the theory behind the blackmail operation. That I've never even seen the theory that he was shaking people down. Now, I think Leon Black actually, like, maybe like there might be a little bit of like, okay, I'll pay you $40 million a year because you know what we've been doing, and we're just hypothesizing here, not talking, and we're talking all in the realm of allegations. But that, so anyway, so that nothing that they found here to me disproves that he worked for spy services.
I was so curious to get your take on this because I saw people bouncing the story around social media saying we learned so much from it.
Case closed.
Okay, so does it fill in some details? Yes, absolutely. It fills in some details. Yeah, it's interesting stuff about people who were investing with him early in his career. But it absolutely, you get through all of these thousands of words, and it's not case closed at all about how he made so much money. The implication or the suggestion, or in some case the accusation, is that his fortune was kind of from siphoning off funds from people like
which
Les
I think
Wexner.
is true, by the way.
I'm sure that is. Yeah, I'm sure that's true. It still does not explain how he went from a fail, like he was basically pushed out of Bear Stearns, and this article explains that. And then how you keep failing up and up and up. It doesn't actually ultimately explain that at all. That still remains. If anything, it's more of a mystery after you see how many people were screwed over by him. Powerful people were screwed over by him in his early years, and actually throughout his entire career, seemingly. It doesn't make any more sense, I don't think, at least.
Yeah, and so the Epstein Transparency Act kicks in Friday. We're supposed to get a big release of information. It'll probably come 5 o'clock on the Friday before the Christmas break, but that'll be interesting to see what's in there. We have to cut this short, but two things I would point to, and we'll have a story on this hopefully by Friday.
Because then we can talk about it on the Friday show.
At Drop Site, where so two things I would flag in here that are interesting, that raise more questions that they answer. So he says they started. So he's talking about this. He said that year the couple traveled to England. While they were there, Hale took Epstein to visit a rich acquaintance of hers, Nick Leese, at his family's countryside manor. There they met Nick's father, Douglas Leese, a defense contractor with extensive connections in the arms industry and the British government. He took an immediate liking to Epstein. The story we've been working on focuses significantly on this Douglas Leese character. Go ahead and look up Douglas Leese. If you're the New York Times, you think it's sufficient to just tell your readership that he's a, quote, defense contractor with extensive connections in the arms industry. You're going to have to wait for Drop Site News to tell you a little bit more about who Douglas Leese is and who these connections were in the arms industry, and who he did his defense, quote unquote, defense contracting with. You won't be surprised to learn.
Was it Venezuela?
It was not Venezuela. A lot of it going on in the Middle East. Separately, they say, and this is a useful revelation, that, quote, back in New York, he joined forces with John Stanley Pottinger, a lawyer who had recently left a senior post in the Justice Department. Epstein, Pottinger, and Pottinger's brother rented a penthouse office in the Hotel St. Moritz on Central Park South. The broker, told us that Epstein initially stiffed her on the commission. And then they kind of just move on. Who was Pottinger? A central figure in Iran-Contra, in which the U.S. worked with Israel to send weapons to Iran in exchange for cash that they would eagerly send to the Contras. We'll get a lot more into that. So
Robert Maxwell.
So they've
all kinds
Lisa
of
and
stuff.
Maxwell were tight.
Yep.
So we've connected you. So the New York Times connected him to Lease, which he had denied a connection to Douglas Lease, by the way. They don't even mention that in the past he had angrily rejected any connection to like Douglas Lease and said maybe he knew the kid. And there's a reason he would want to angrily reject a connection to Douglas Lease. And then he's got him connected to a key figure in Iran-Contra. But to the New York Times, this is more prosaic.
Yes, just as is. Yep.
Okay.
I'm glad you're doing reporting on that, because when I saw the line defense contractor, I was like, this is, again, not answering questions.
You're not a moron,
are
you see. Defense
creating
contractor,
questions. Like, yes, because I clicked on the link from somebody who had posted it and been like, lots of questions answered here. And as I'm reading it, I'm like, no, lots of questions raised
lots of new
here.
questions are raised.
What are you talking about? All right. Looking forward to that drop site report, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about it on the Friday show. Let's move on to updates in the Brown University shooting that left 2 students dead. Kash Patel announced yesterday they're offering a reward. We can put this video up on the screen. You'll watch it. You can see they put out a video of a person of interest in that shooting at Brown University from the weekend. They have now announced a $50,000 reward. You can see the person, if you're listening to this, you can see the person walking around different parts of the Brown campus seemingly of the Brown campus, in the daylight. Person is dressed in all black. Can't really make out details of who it is, but that's where the FBI announced yesterday. Actually, they have this person of interest. It came, though, as we learned, next element up on the screen, that MIT, which is, of course, in Boston, not all that far, well, Cambridge, if we're going to do that thing, not all that far from Providence, a professor at MIT who was a nuclear scientist, essentially, was shot to death at home in Brookline. So huge update potentially in the Brown story. We have no evidence that this is connected or not, but Brian, as you saw, I was combining Brown and Ryan. The Brown, this is the next video, we put this up on the screen. Over at Brown, you see the FBI agent. I don't want to laugh at this, Ryan, because but they're just scraping the snow here, looking for evidence, and they're like tripping around as they're kicking the snow, looking for evidence. So I'm sure that we're going to get to the bottom of this soon enough. But as you put earlier, you either have 2 people on the loose or one person who has now killed 3 people on the loose in New England.
And so the FBI, scrambling, is now offering a $50,000 reward, or presumably you can get a private flight to Vegas with Kash Patel, valued at $50,000. He recently appeared on Katie Miller's podcast.
Yesterday. Dropped last night. Yeah.
Well,
apparently it was recorded before the Brown shooting.
Okay.
But yes.
In any event, it's about him and his girlfriend.
Right. Tell them maybe to hold the episode until afterwards.
Or maybe don't do that at all. Like, what are you doing?
Well, there's that too. Yes.
When he was appointed, I said, good, because I think it's good to have an incompetent boob running an agency that does a lot of bad things. I now am regretting that. Like, apparently you do need some level of competence at the head of this agency. Like, come on.
Well, in the case of Brown, if this MIT shooting turns out to be connected to the Brown murder, mass shooting, you have a situation where in Brown, the authorities were saying, first of all, Patel said they had somebody who was a suspect in detention. And it was like a long ex post, and the tone of it was sort of, we got the guy, and maybe I'm being uncharitable and reading too much into that, but that was the tone that I took from Patel's post on X. And the authorities in Providence were basically like, everything is fine, everyone should feel safe. So if it turns out that the same person shot then murdered another professor, this time at MIT, so someone else from a campus, they're going to look even dumber for trying to assuage the fears of the community, which we're like learning as the person is still on the loose, actually should be, that people should be afraid in Providence because they don't have the person.
And obviously all human life is precious. Nuno Loureiro appears to be like one of the most brilliant guys you can imagine. Like just a brain that it just has like an inconceivable level of intelligence in it. And so like tributes are pouring in from people talking about the, what he will now be unable to contribute to society, and it's something we can't even conceive of because he's one of those kinds of people who's able to, think beyond, other mere mortals.
And obviously, there's speculation happening right now that this is
right.
foreign policy related.
I mean,
when you have a leading nuclear scientist.
Yeah, according to Israel, he is a completely legitimate target. Like all nuclear scientists to them are legitimate targets, which I hope that underscores just how barbaric it is to be bombing nuclear scientists and their families at will.
We'll obviously keep everybody updated on the story because if it's connected to the Brown case, if it's connected to any foreign policy, it's huge. And so we're going to follow it really, really closely, but wanted to bring you an update on that situation as it happened. Ryan, should we move on to Gaza?
So first of all, kind of out of nowhere, Trump issued a new travel ban, expanding the list of countries to include the Palestinian Authority. So putting people from the Palestinian Authority on the travel ban has an added layer of cruelty because they don't have their own country. Like it's one thing if you ban people from Chad from traveling. They can be in Chad. But in the Palestinian Authority, if like they may be at extreme risk from the occupying country. They don't have their own sovereignty to fall back on. And so we'll be exploring that and the consequences of it, more thoroughly in the days to come. But today I wanted to talk about living conditions in Gaza in a way that goes beyond the kind of normal headlines that we get. We had a story yesterday in Dropsite that you could put up G2 here. The headline tells it all. Garbage is poisoning Gaza. And this is by Abdelkader Saba, who's a videographer and photographer in Gaza, who works with our editor, Sharif Abdel-Qaddous, who co-authored this piece. And the footage and the photos that we'll be showing you here of the trash pileup is from Abdelkader Saba. So you can roll the next element. I'll just read some of this piece here. Over the past 2 years, Gaza's civilian infrastructure has been systematically destroyed by the Israeli military, including waste management services. And so what you're looking at here is a transfer station. And in a typical, this is the Yarmouk waste transfer site. So typically at a transfer site, people bring in garbage and then it gets transferred to its final resting place or its incineration place or a landfill or what have you. The final waste treatment facility where this transfer site would transfer the waste to is now behind the yellow line that Israel has drawn. And so they're not taking anymore. So every day, more and more trucks coming in, and it just piles up. So you see children playing on it there. You see people setting up their tents, absolutely right next to it. The quotes that Abdelkader Saba got from people who are living there are just horrifying. One person told him that this is my tent and this is the garbage dump I'm living across from. We don't sleep, not at night, nor during the day because of the garbage. The smell comes at us constantly, and our children are all ill. They suffer from severe headaches. We're dealing with an infestation of germs and insects. You
can see why.
Yeah, you can absolutely understand it. Another person said, we were displaced from the city of Beit Lahia in northern Gaza Strip, and we came to Gaza City. We found that the displaced were crowded in every corner of the Strip. We were forced to live among garbage in the Yarmouk garbage site of the Gaza municipality. We had thought we'd stay somewhere safe, somewhere decent, but we were forced here. There's nowhere else to go. We were forced to stay at this dump. I'm suffering because of this dump, suffering from the germs, the rats, and dogs. Every day, I find 20 or 30 rats inside my tent, right inside of it. I don't even have a tent fit for human life, unquote. So that is, in the best of scenarios. Like, that's when the weather is nice, the sun is in the sky. The last couple of weeks have seen the opposite. Maybe we can roll to G5 here. You can, this young kid giving a tour of the tent village that is now constructed. You don't have to be able to understand Arabic to understand the absolute fury at what the world is delivering here as the wind blows. You know, people have been living now 3 years, so you can see garbage blowing into their tent. You can see their tents blowing away. It's the third winter that people are going into with these tents. While sufficient supplies for over 1 million people are sitting outside of Gaza, just outside, in trucks, just outside. This is Al-Shifa Hospital. So even the hospitals were flooding from this storm. Just to underline that, supplies for more than 1 million people facing these conditions are in trucks outside of Gaza. We have a ceasefire. We have a ceasefire agreed to. They're supposed to allow that in. They're just simply not allowing it in. We talked to the head of a relief organization who's in Gaza, and he said his theory is that they're trying to make it just utterly unlivable. And they've offered to open the Rafah border in one direction out, to say, like, look, it feels like it's like, okay, look, if you were holding on hope for the war to end, and then you were going to stay, what we're trying to do is destroy that hope, because now the war has technically ended, yet your life is just unlivable. So why don't you just leave?
Right.
Like that is the message that he believes that Israel Netanyahu is sending with this.
Well, and that's one of my questions for you was going to be is the U.S. involvement in, what's the best word for this, being the Sherpa over this peace process. What is U.S. involvement right now looking like? And is this then also a U.S. strategy to squeeze Gazans for the raising of the strip into Mara Gaza or whatever?
Right. I mean, you would think it has to be. The policy is what it's doing. The U.S. military, they set up this coordination center with Israel to try to deconflict during the ceasefire, which Israel breaks effectively every single day, and announces that it has broken it. But the U.S. military sent some of our top logistics experts that we have, and the U.S. military does have, like, when it comes to logistics, like they have been taking it extremely seriously for 200 years, and have some of the best at it. So we sent our best and brightest to this coordination center to figure out how is it that we're not able to get the supplies in and get the supplies distributed to the population. Within weeks, they all left because they were like, oh, this is not a logistics problem. This is a political problem. And the military said this publicly, that the problem is the Israelis have a list of things that they call dual military use, that they won't let in. And the list includes tent poles, pencils, paper, most, like, cooking fuel is almost non-existent at this point. And so they're like, you don't need us. We're not the answer to this problem. The logistics are solvable. The political problem is what you need to deal with.
Those images, if people were just listening to this, go ahead and find the YouTube video of this segment, because you can see the proximity of the tents to the garbage, and it's horrifying.
Yeah, and just getting worse every single day as it piles up and piles up. Meanwhile, there was I don't know if you saw this, there was an AI image going around of a fake account who's trying to just raise money on Chuffed, saying like, look at my family, and it's like 12 Palestinians in a tent, but the water's up to their waist, which is of course is impossible because the tents are not watertight. So you're not getting like, and there wouldn't be that packed in. But it was other than that, other than the water, you look at it, it's like, wow, that looks real. So you're going to see a lot of, and to X's credit, it did have a note on it that said this is AI generated because they could figure out with the hands and stuff like that, and also the water level. But like, so people like AI is going in and just and exploiting this misery.
Yeah, and obviously, I know your reporting follows this closely, but everyone is happy that the war is over. Humane people are happy that the war is over, but on the other side of that, the political incentives to keep an eye on the humanitarian crisis are obviously diminished at this point,
right
here in the U.S. and all over the world.
Yes, indeed, awful. So we will be back on Friday, and then we'll roll out for a couple weeks, 2 weeks. I guess we're gonna have like pre-taped segments. Yesterday I interviewed Nathaniel Raymond, who's a Yale humanitarian researcher on Sudan. I think we'll post his video. That was an incredible and sobering, intense interview with this guy, talking about like as bad as things are in Gaza, like in Sudan, like the number of people getting killed and starved. It's like if it continues like this, we're going to be at Rwanda levels, and then for 20 years we'll have people talking about why nobody did anything.
I look forward to watching that. We have some great pre-recorded content coming out. Ryan,
I interviewed Emily.
I interviewed Ryan, so that'll be fun. And we will have a Friday show this week. So this isn't us signing off until 2026. You will still get another dose of us on Friday, and then some pre-recorded doses of us over the holiday. But I'm looking forward to being back here in the new year. Ryan, Wednesday, the first Wednesday of the new year is going to be January 7th.
All right.
So it's going to be a while before we're back in the studio.
All right. Stay safe. We'll see you then.
See ya.